He opened the relationship, then called it cheating. My world fell apart and I finally saw the truth. He told her to go explore. She explored. And then he lost his mind. That sentence alone should tell you everything you need to know about this story. But trust me, it gets so much more complicated than that. So our storyteller is 21 years old, been with her boyfriend for almost 3 years, and this is her first ever relationship. He is 23, has experience with other people before her, and up until recently they were talking about kids, house names, the whole future mapped out. They had the kind of relationship where you start speaking in a shared language, finishing each other's references, naming your hypothetical pets. Sweet, right? Except something started to crack. They were spending months apart for the first time because he had landed a graduate job in a different city and she was still figuring things out, working long unpredictable shifts in hospitality and living back at her family home where privacy was limited and the walls felt closer than they used to. The distance was doing damage in the slow, quiet way that distance always does. They stopped arguing over anything meaningful and started just quietly drifting, conversations becoming shorter, calls becoming less frequent, the comfortable silences turning into something colder and harder to name. The intimacy dried up almost completely. And she was the one feeling it most, because she has always had a higher sex drive than him and the sudden stop hit her differently. It was not just physical. It was the feeling of being next to someone and still feeling alone. Now here is where the story takes its first big turn. He was the one who brought up opening the relationship. Not her. Him. He floated the idea, said it might be good for both of them while they were apart, and even threw in the detail that watching her be with someone else would excite him. She was nervous but honestly a little relieved too, because she had always had a quiet worry in the back of her mind that she would regret never exploring before settling down. She was 21. This was the only relationship she had ever had. She loved him deeply and still wanted a future with him, but this felt like a rare and disorienting chance to figure herself out a little without having to blow everything up to do it. So she said yes. Over the following month she met 2 people through dating apps, a girl and a guy. She was completely transparent on the apps about having a boyfriend and just wanting to explore. She was not pretending to be single. She was not sneaking around. Both people she met were fine with the situation going in. With the girl things developed into something more comfortable and easy, less purely physical and more like a genuine friendship that also happened to include something more. She spent a few nights at this girl's place, they played video games together, went to the pub, talked for hours, and yes, had sex a couple of times after drinking. It felt relaxed and uncomplicated in a way that she had not expected. She mentioned to her boyfriend that she had been staying at this girl's place occasionally. And here is the thing she thought was obvious, she assumed he understood what that meant. They had an open relationship. She was seeing people. She had not hidden any of it. Why would she be sleeping over at a girl's apartment she met on a dating app if they were just playing board games? She even got comfortable enough to start thinking about the future visit her boyfriend had planned. He had mentioned wanting a threesome at some point, had floated it as something exciting to look forward to. So she asked the girl if she would be interested and the girl said yes. She went to her boyfriend excitedly, thinking she was doing something thoughtful and inclusive, folding his fantasy into the new arrangement, offering him something he had said he wanted. And that is the exact moment everything exploded. He went absolutely nuts. Completely lost it. Said he had no idea she had actually slept with this girl, that he thought the sleepovers were just friendly hangouts, and that he felt cheated on. She was floored. She stood there, probably with her stomach dropping through the floor, trying to understand how they could possibly be standing in such completely different versions of the same story, living in the same relationship and apparently in entirely different realities. This was not a secret operation. She had been open the whole time. She had told him where she was staying. She was using a dating app that he knew about. She had not whispered any of it. And now suddenly the rules had changed and she had broken them without being told what the new rules even were. Here is the part that really got me. She had noticed some nights where he was not replying to messages the way he usually did, or not calling like normal, just going quiet in a way that felt pointed and deliberate. She had assumed, reasonably, that he was also exploring on his own end and simply had not felt the need to share the details the same way she had. Then one of her university friends sent her a screenshot of him on a dating app just a couple of weeks prior. When she confronted him about that, he said he only had the app to look for a third person for a potential threesome. Not for solo exploration. His being on the app was innocent research. Hers was betrayal. Are you hearing this? Let me just sit with that for a second. So to recap what the rules apparently were, according to him and only him, the open relationship meant she was allowed to have sex with other people only if he was also there watching or participating, but he was allowed to browse dating apps alone, disappear for whole evenings without contact, and define the terms of the agreement retroactively whenever it suited him. She was expected to operate within a framework that had never been written down or spoken out loud, to somehow intuit a set of rules that existed only in his imagination, and then to be held accountable for violating them. He got to explore the idea in private. She was judged for exploring the reality he had invited. Cool. Very fair. Totally equal. She was devastated. She deleted the apps immediately. She blocked both people she had seen, with no explanation to them, which if you think about it is its own kind of painful because those were real people she had been completely honest with from the very start, people who had agreed to something in good faith and were now getting silence and a block with no context. She went into full damage control mode and started apologizing even though she genuinely did not believe she had done anything wrong. She poured out how much she loved him, reminded him of everything they had built together, the shared friend group, the kids' names they had chosen, the street they wanted to live on. She was reaching back into every tender thing they had ever made together and laying it all on the table, trying to remind him what was real. She was throwing everything she had at keeping this together. And his response was to go quiet. To withdraw into a cold, controlled distance that communicated everything without saying anything. To make her feel like she had to earn her way back into a relationship she had never actually left. Now here is what I think was quietly happening underneath all of this. He had suggested opening the relationship but had not actually thought through what that meant in practice for her. He imagined it in a very specific and controlled way, a fantasy version where she explored only in situations he could see and approve of, something curated and contained that he could mentally manage. When the reality turned out to be her genuinely connecting with someone, enjoying herself, spending nights away, building something that looked a little like emotional closeness with another person, that hit him somewhere he was not prepared for. He had opened a door without thinking seriously about what might walk through it. And instead of admitting that he had not communicated his actual expectations clearly, he reframed the whole thing as her fault. He called it cheating because calling it a miscommunication would have required him to take half the responsibility. The emotional connection she had built with the girl seemed to be the specific thing that stung him most. And honestly, that makes a kind of sense if you try to be generous. Emotional intimacy feels different to people than purely physical encounters. It has a weight and a texture that can feel like a different category of threat entirely. But here is the problem with that. If that was a boundary, he needed to say so before she went out and lived her life under the assumption that she had his blessing. You do not get to set the rules after the game has started and then call the other player a cheater. There is also a bigger and more uncomfortable question lurking underneath this whole situation. If they were truly happy, and if he was truly invested in their future the way he always said, why did his first response to the strain in their relationship involve sending her out to sleep with other people? Not therapy. Not more regular calls. Not a plan to see each other sooner. Not a hard conversation about how they were both feeling. His solution was an open relationship. And when it turns out that she actually used that permission he gave her, his reaction was not concern or sadness, it was fury and withdrawal. That pattern is worth thinking about very carefully. Then came the phone call. The one where they finally talked properly, where the performances fell away and something more honest started to surface. She apologized again for the communication gap. He agreed there had been confusion but notably did not apologize for his own part in creating it. Then he asked her if she was actually happy in the relationship. And she surprised herself completely by saying no. Not as an accusation and not with anger. Just as a quiet, tired, long overdue truth that had been sitting inside her waiting for the right question to unlock it. He said he was not happy either. And just like that, quietly and without ceremony, something that had been held together by habit and future planning and shared friends quietly came apart. What strikes me about that moment is how honest it was. After all the chaos and the accusations and the apologizing, the truest thing either of them said to each other was that neither of them had been genuinely happy for a while. Not just recently. For a while. That is a significant thing to admit, and it probably took all the upheaval of the previous weeks to shake it loose. The open relationship was not the cause of their problems. It was a symptom. It was what happens when two people sense that something is broken and instead of looking directly at the crack they try to paper over it with something exciting and new. After the breakup she felt something she did not expect. Relief. That detail matters more than almost anything else in this story. When a relationship ends and the dominant feeling once the initial hurt subsides is relief, that is your nervous system telling you a truth that your heart was not ready to hear. It means some part of you had been braced. Some part of you had been quietly waiting for permission to put something down. She had been carrying something heavy for longer than she realized, maybe longer than she had even let herself notice. She had been so focused on holding everything together that she had not stopped to ask whether it was still worth holding. And now she was not carrying it anymore. Now she could breathe. She also reached out to the girl from the dating app, the Minecraft girl as people in the comments were apparently calling her, to explain what had happened. She did not owe anyone an explanation. She could have disappeared and nobody could have blamed her. But she chose honesty again, the same way she had chosen it from the very beginning, and she told this girl the truth about how everything had fallen apart. The girl was completely kind about it and told her to take her time. That small moment of grace at the end of the story is genuinely lovely and worth holding on to. Out of all that chaos, she might have found a real friend. Here is my verdict, and I am not softening this at all. He set the terms. She followed what she understood those terms to be. He then changed the terms without telling her, felt hurt by the outcome of his own suggestion, punished her with silence and accusations, refused to apologize for his own lack of clarity, and then had the audacity to make her feel like she needed to earn her way back. That is not a communication breakdown. That is a pattern of behavior where one person holds all the control and the other person is expected to read minds and perform loyalty on demand. She asked in her post how to earn his trust back. And I want to say this as clearly as I can. She should not have been trying to earn anything back. She had done nothing that fell outside of the agreement as she understood it. The person who needed to do some reflection was him, about why he suggested something he clearly was not emotionally prepared for, why he could not admit his own role in the confusion, and why his first move when he felt hurt was to make her feel small and guilty rather than have an honest conversation. The breakup was the right outcome. Not because he is a monster and not because she is blameless, but because two people who cannot communicate clearly about something as significant as opening a relationship are not in the right place to be planning a life together. She said she felt relief. She said she suddenly saw job opportunities opening up in new cities. She said she made a friend out of the wreckage. That is not a sad ending. That is a 21-year-old woman realizing that the map she had been following was drawn by someone else, and that there is a whole world she gets to figure out on her own terms now. Mom thought growing up meant we'd pick her. She never counted on us loving our dads too. Her mom had it all figured out. Once the kids were grown, they would finally choose her. Every holiday, every summer, every long weekend. The custody schedules would be done and the math would finally work in her favor. Except nobody told the kids. And now a 20-year-old is on Reddit trying to figure out how to explain to her mother that loving your dad is not a betrayal. So here is the situation. This woman is 52 years old and she has built her life around a version of motherhood that involved a lot of moving parts. She had 2 kids with one man, never married him, split up when the youngest was still a baby who could not have understood what was happening or why the house suddenly felt different. Then she married someone else and had a daughter with him before that marriage also ended in divorce. Then she married again and had more children. So at this point she has kids from 3 different relationships, various custody arrangements, and what sounds like a very full and occasionally chaotic household where the calendar was never simple and the holidays always required negotiation. For years the custody schedule was the structure that organized everything. 50-50 with the older 2 kids and their dad. Primary custody of the half-sister with weekend visits to her father. The mom seems to have always believed that the legal structure of custody was a temporary inconvenience, something imposed on her life by courts and paperwork and the logistics of 2 separate households, something that would dissolve naturally once the children got old enough to make their own choices. And in her mind, once they had that freedom, they would obviously choose her. Because she was the constant. She was the one with the bigger family, the fuller house, the siblings, and the holidays and the noise and the life. She was the gravitational center, or at least that is how she saw herself. That belief must have kept her going through years of drop-offs and pickups and shared school calendars and awkward exchanges in parking lots. She was wrong. The 20-year-old and her 18-year-old brother are genuinely close to their dad. They like his house. It is quieter. There is space to think and breathe and just exist without the ambient hum of a large blended household running at full capacity around them. When she turned 18, she decided that her college summers would be spent at her dad's because she could breathe there, because she could come home to something that felt calm and unhurried rather than busy and loud. Her brother followed her lead this year and made the same call. You can picture the 2 of them arriving at that understanding separately and then recognizing it in each other. That is not a rejection of their mother. That is just 2 young adults honestly choosing the environment that works best for them at this stage of their lives, when they are figuring out who they are and what kind of space they need to do that. But here is where it gets thorny. Their mom is not receiving it that way. She is experiencing it as abandonment. As proof that everything she built was not enough, that all the years and the effort and the noise and the fullness of her home added up to something her children were quietly relieved to step away from. She had apparently always believed that being the parent who gave them more siblings, more family dinners, more of a bustling home life, would count for something decisive when the time came. That the scale of what she provided would tip the balance permanently in her direction. And instead her kids are choosing peace and quiet at their dad's house, which must feel like a very specific kind of sting. Not just loss but something that feels almost like a verdict being delivered. Oh, this woman genuinely thought that having more children would create loyalty points. I need a moment. The situation reached a new level of tension around the holidays. The mom's current husband has family coming to stay for the entire month of December, including Thanksgiving. She wanted all 3 older kids there for all of it. Not just Christmas, not just a few days, all of it, the whole sprawling month of obligation and family dinners and togetherness. You can feel the weight of that expectation, the way she must have pictured it in her head, everyone home, everyone present, the house full in exactly the way she always imagined it would be once the custody schedule was finally out of the picture. The daughter told her they would come for Christmas but not for the whole month and not for every single holiday. The mom had a fit. She said that the kids being adults was supposed to make things easier, not harder. And you can hear the exhaustion and the bitterness in that, the sense that she had been waiting a long time for easier and it kept not arriving. And here is the line that I think cracked everything open. The daughter said to her mother, "This is the reality of having kids with different men. You will not get all of us every single time because we have a dad we love and want to see too. I genuinely respect this young woman for saying that out loud because it is the truth and it needed to be said even though it clearly landed like a slap. She did not say it cruelly. She said it because someone had to, because her mother had been living inside a version of reality that was not real, and the kindest thing available was to name that directly. Here is what I think the mother has never fully reckoned with. Having children in multiple separate family units does not create one big unified family that eventually coheres around her. It creates several families that all have their own gravity, their own traditions, their own pull, their own version of what home feels like and smells like and sounds like on a Sunday morning. The kids did not grow up feeling like they belonged to one home. They grew up belonging to multiple homes, with multiple sets of rhythms and relationships and people who loved them. And when you belong to multiple homes, you split your time between them. That does not stop being true just because a court is no longer enforcing it. There is something genuinely painful about the mother's situation, and I do not want to dismiss that. She is watching her children choose, freely and honestly, to spend meaningful time away from her. That hurts in a specific way that I imagine feels different from losing custody time to a schedule. When a judge decides where your kids sleep, you can be angry at the system, at the law, at the other parent. You can tell yourself it is unfair. But this is not a judge deciding where her kids sleep. This is her kids deciding. Her actual children, who she raised and loved and sacrificed for, looking at the full picture of their lives and choosing to weight it slightly differently than she wanted. And she is learning, later than she should have had to, that more children and a bigger house and remarriage did not guarantee her the center position she imagined. She built a large family. She just cannot command it. But here is the thing, and this is where I have to be direct. Her disappointment is real and understandable, but her expectation was always unrealistic. She cannot have structured her children's lives around shared custody and then expect that the moment legal obligations lifted, all of those other relationships would simply evaporate as though they had never mattered. Her kids built real bonds with their dads during all those years of back and forth, all those ordinary weeknights and Saturday mornings and homework sessions and sick days that happened in a different house. Those bonds do not disappear because the kids are now adults. If anything, adults are freer to honor those bonds because no one is telling them they have to. No one is making them. They are just doing what feels natural because it is. And the daughter is absolutely right that her half-sister will almost certainly make similar choices in a few years. The half-sister has already said she is excited about the idea of spending more time with her dad. She is 13. She is telling you exactly what she wants, clearly and without ambiguity, in the way that 13-year-olds do when they have not yet learned to soften their honesty for the comfort of adults. The mother would be far better served by paying attention to that signal now, by nurturing the relationships she has with her kids in whatever form they take, rather than holding on to the fantasy that growing up would make them fully hers. My verdict here is clear. This mother loves her children, and that is not in question. But she made choices across her adult life that resulted in her children having multiple loving parents and multiple homes. That is not a tragedy, it is just the shape of the family she built. The children are not being disloyal. They are being honest. They are doing exactly what healthy adults with good relationships across multiple households tend to do, which is spread their time and love around rather than concentrating it all in one place on demand. The daughter does not need to be more delicate. She does not need to soften the truth further or find a gentler way to deliver it. She already said the essential thing, that both houses are home, not just her mother's. That is not a cruel statement. It is a complete and accurate one. What the mother needs is not a different explanation. She needs time to grieve the version of her family that only ever existed in her imagination and make room for the real one, which by the sound of it is still full of kids who show up, who come for Christmas, who call, who visit. That should be enough. And if it is not, that is something she needs to work out for herself. So which one hit harder for you? Drop it in the comments, and if you made it this far, a like and subscribe would mean a lot.